Welcome back to 2K Away.
Welcome back.
Oh, welcome back.
Stupid.
We can't have it the exact same every time. Gotta spice it up a little.
Also, somebody is still fucking with my voodoo doll. Stop it.
Welcome back. I am Paige. This is my sister Peyton.
Hey.
We used to be 2,000 miles away from each other. Now we're in the same room. We are finally done with stupid Stuart Northcott. I was so done, in case you didn't realize last week.
I know, and I really thank I want to thank everybody for keeping with me for the 2.5 hours that I spent.
Oh, that was a long one.
It really was. And the recording itself was about 3 hours long. And trust me, I did some wizard type editing to really cut that down. And I'm still sick, but I even left some mistakes in there, and I was like, you know what? This is fine. Don't care anymore. Because, I mean, Stuart Northcott is a shit show, and I was
boy, was that a shit show.
Oh,
my goodness.
I know.
Yeah, it was. I can't even. So I am this week, Kitty, come on. This week, I am not going to do a two-parter. But this might be a little bit long just because this was kind of fun to research. So, and it's not going to be quite as heavy as what the Wineville chicken coop murders were.
Yeah, because that's one of the heaviest.
Well, because also, this is way back in history. So, you know, according to Peyton, those murders aren't as bad.
I'm really tired of this.
But for real though, we're going in the way back time machine for this one because we're going back to like, let me double check, 18th-ish century to early 19th century. You know, I had to really look up how
to say that.
Well, what exactly was the 19th century? What exactly was the 18th?
1700s.
Yeah. I was one of those people that thought, you know, the 1900s was the 19th century.
No.
Yeah, no.
Because it's always the one before it.
Yeah, I figured that out.
So like we're in the 21st century now.
I know.
Yes.
And I knew that, but it's still confusing to me.
A good way to remember that is 20th Century Fox. All in the 1900s.
Oh, that doesn't help me.
Okay. You know what? Never mind. I take back what I just said.
Yeah, that doesn't help me at all.
Okay.
So it just all confuses me, but that's okay. Get right into this guy. These guys, rather, because this is a duo. And they're not related, not a couple, just a couple of friends. So before I get into...
us. We're just friends.
Just friends. So before I get into talking about these two assholes, I'm going to give you a little bit of history lesson on 18th century to early 19th century Scotland. And I love Scotland so much. It's so pretty, and I love the way you all talk. It's amazing. I hope to go there someday.
Yes.
Someday. Scotland's on my bucket list.
Absolutely.
And Ireland, which that's where these two are actually from, is Ireland. We'll get into it. I'm going to pull a Peyton. You know what? I'll get into it.
You're welcome.
So, way back then, they gave their legal system this fun little name called the Bloody Code. Because...
I love that.
I know. It's so metal.
It really is.
So, they named it...
That's a sick ass band name.
Seriously. Any of our Morbid fans, as in the podcast Morbid, you know, they're always looking at, you know, creating band names. So that's why we're like, yeah, this would definitely be the one to do.
That'd be a sick band name.
So they named it this because there were over 200 different crimes that would receive the death penalty, which included, but not limited to, Murder. Okay.
Okay.
Arson. Eh.
Oh.
Okay. Cutting down trees. Stealing a horse.
Just a horse, not anything else?
Stealing a rabbit. Stealing from a shipwreck.
Wait, as in like you dive into the ocean?
The shipwreck, yes. Or just, a ship that washed up on the beach or whatever, because, that happened.
Okay.
You run ashore and you take things from the shipwreck. That's illegal, and you off with your head. Also, pickpocketing things that were worth a shilling. Which apparently in today's money is like 30 pounds. So, yeah. And being out at night with a blackened face. Now, I don't think they're literally meaning blackface.
What does blackened face mean? Does that mean a minor?
I got it as somebody that, is dirty, basically. Like a coal miner. I don't know if there's coal miners in Scotland.
But there's
but
mines.
There are mines.
There's mines
everywhere in the world, So, that type of... Yeah, so those are just a few things.
It's 7.5 minutes in and I've already cried.
I'm telling you, this was fascinating to look into. You know what? This is the type of history that I'm into. I'm sorry, it was the cutting down trees and the stealing rabbits. I know. You could literally die from that. They would kill you.
They were really fucking serious about their trees.
The law would kill you, not just the person you stole from. No, the law would kill you if you stole a rabbit. I don't know. Yeah.
They're really lucky.
Because in the late or early 1700s, like late 1600s, early 1700s, there was like 91 crimes that's a capital crime that you would die from. And it went from like 90 something to literally over 200.
Look, I'm not really one to promote committing crimes, but that's too many.
That's
too many offenses that you can die by doing.
I'm telling you.
No.
Seriously. So it was a problem.
They weren't fucking around.
They were not. No. Mm-mm. So basically what happened was that the rich people were the ones in power. Obviously, that's what happened in this time frame. Mm-hmm. Everywhere, not just here. So they were in the power, and they thought that people who committed crimes, just crimes in general, were sinful, lazy, or greedy. So therefore, they didn't deserve any mercy because they're lazy and they're greedy. Because they try to eat. Those greedy bastards. So there was also the fact that they thought that this would act as a deterrent, which is why
no shit.
All the executions, which is another reason why all the executions were public, so that everybody else, all the other poor, greedy, sinful people could see
those
that this
poor, sinful bastards.
Yeah, right, exactly. So that they would see this man stole a rabbit. Hang him.
Oh.
That's another reason why it was so public.
Well, isn't that always why executions used to be public?
Well, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. But they thought it would be a deterrent. So how can we get people to stop cutting down trees? I know. Let's kill them. Yes. So they thought if they knew that they could die if they were caught, that they wouldn't do the things that they want them to stop doing. So what was also happening around this time was that Edinburgh, which Scotland, I love you, and I didn't want to be one of those people that tried to mispronounce your capital. So I looked up the pronunciation, and I'm hoping I'm saying it correctly. Edinburgh was one of the leading centers for anatomy in Europe. which is so awesome.
So cool.
So awesome. There were professors or teachers and like that were doctors as well, that they would be called anatomists because they would be dissecting cadavers and figuring out anatomy, essentially.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Edinburgh was the leading place for all of this. So the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh had some top doctors there doing studies and teaching on anatomy. So again, they would do dissections on different cadavers, and then students would literally line up to watch this and learn, how all of this worked.
Yeah.
So under Scottish law, they could only use the corpses of people who had been executed, had committed suicide, or the corpses of orphans.
Oh.
So if there was an orphanage and one of the kids died, they were allowed to use their body as well.
If they're in an orphanage, technically they're a ward of the state.
Right.
So that I understand a little bit more. It's grim.
It's very grim.
But I don't understand the one about suicide.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know. Was it like...
Oh, I didn't see anything further in that, just that. But that's why they were able to have so many bodies to learn from, because there were so many people being executed for little things.
Whatever, yeah.
Literally anything they could be executed for. So therefore, they had a shit ton of bodies to be able to learn from.
Wow.
Yeah. So during the Bloody Code, I pretty much just said that. I said they had cadavers aplenty with how many people they were executing.
Well, that sounds almost like pirate shit. The Bloody Code.
Oh, yes. Yes, that's awesome. It really wasn't awesome because they were executing people for stealing something worth a shilling.
The Bloody Code, just the terminology sounds great.
I know. So that all changed, though, with the Judgment of Death Act of 1823. Which is also
a sick fucking band name.
An amazing name. Judgment of Death Act of
T-shirt.
1823.
So look out for our new t-shirt.
Rep in Scotland.
Hell yeah.
So what this did was gave the judge the discretion to pass a lesser sentence with the exception of murder and treason. So those were the two big uns that they were like, no, you still are going to die for that. But
again, more understandable than cutting down trees.
Right. Exactly.
Oh.
So the judge now had basically the option to give them a lesser sentence, like life in prison for cutting down a tree instead. So once that passed, they weren't executing as many people, so the doctors and researchers weren't getting as many cadavers as they used to. Mm-hmm. They got so desperate that they started paying people for the dead bodies. So in comes the Resurrection Men, as they were called. Again.
Oh, sick fucking... You know what? Look out for our new metal band. It's just going to be me and Paige, and these are going to be songs on our album. Okay?
I'm telling you. So, in reality, they were just grave robbers. But they had the name Resurrection Men.
It's sick, dude.
So, this was tricky, though, because...
Grave robbing? No shit.
Well, it's tricky in a weird way. Because it's against the law. It was against the law to disturb a grave and to rob a grave.
Yes.
It was against the law. But it was not against the law to retrieve the corpse in the grave. Because by all accounts, that body doesn't technically belong to anyone. So you couldn't... So obviously back then, people, and still now, people are buried with some of their personal effects. Money, maybe, depending on your religion or beliefs. Or
jewelry, something,
things like that. So those things you couldn't take because that was against the law. But you could take that body, and then that body was kind of yours because it was in your possession because nobody owned it.
Loopholes.
Wow.
Okay.
Yep. So, as long as they were not caught digging up the grave, they could take that body to the anatomist, and they could legally sell that body to them
Words are hard.
and keep the money.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you can
Okay.
imagine, this got pretty popular.
Yeah.
So people would try to get the bodies that had just been buried because the fresher the body, the more money you would get. So essentially, the night of a funeral or the next day or, whatever, they'd be looking for the freshest dirt, dig them back up,
Yeah.
take them to the anatomist,
Goodness.
get some money. So it got so bad that families would either take it upon themselves to watch the grave in shifts at all times, or even hire an quote-unquote armed guard to watch at all times.
Oh.
When I say armed guard, I mean like a neighbor or friend with a gun. So they were doing this in shifts.
Where are the police?
I mean, catching people who were cutting down trees. That's terrible.
So instead of being in cemeteries trying to catch
Grave robbers?
grave robbers, they're running around in the fucking timber going chasing people with axes.
Hey, you know what? Priorities. So then there were even watchtowers put up in a lot of the cemeteries around so that people could watch over the cemeteries and catch the resurrection men.
Where are the police?
I don't know.
I'm crying again.
I wasn't alive then, so I can't answer that.
Are you sure?
Oh, well, I don't know. There's some dates in here that are like, hey, that's important to me. So this brings me, you'll know why.
Okay.
This brings me to William Burke and William Hare. I'm going to refer to them as Burke and Hare because they're both William.
Mm-hmm.
So
William squared.
both men, they saw each other and were like, William, hey, we're friends.
And then they did like a little sitcom, like back to back with their arms like crossed, like William and William.
Like Marley and Marley.
From the Muppet Christmas Carol. And then William and William. Woo!
I'm so hot.
Now I am too. I'm just gonna take off my blanket. Because now I'm sweaty and I'm crying.
Who else's favorite Christmas movie is The Muppet Christmas Carol? Tell us. And if it's not, you're wrong.
If it's The Christmas Story, you're basic.
Don't even come at me if it's Elf. Hate that movie. Anyway. So both men,
God.
again, they were actually from Ireland originally. They grew up there. Burke was born in 1792, and he was married and had a couple kids, who he abandoned and left in Ireland when he moved in Scotland. So already we're off to a great start with Burke.
Sounds like a good dad.
Great guy.
Yeah.
Great guy. So, and it's here that he meets his mistress, Helen McDougall. They never get married, I don't think, because there was...
he was already married.
Well, yeah. But I saw in
For
one
multiple
source...
reasons.
I saw in one source that they had gotten married, but that was only one source. Because I looked at like 5 or 6 different sources for this whole story. But I only saw that in one, so I'm like, I don't know how true that is. So he and Helen moved to Edinburgh, where he met William Hare. And there's not much known about Hare's background, and not even his true age. Because people speculate that he could have been born between like 1792, like when Burke was born, to like 1804. So it's a very big gap. So nobody really knows his true age.
Strange.
So it's just known that he's originally from Ireland. So he possibly owned some kind of boarding house, because they said it was Tanner's Close is where they lived. And anytime I tried to actually look up exactly what a close was because they're called something different here. I remember listening to a Morbid episode. They were talking about that, and Elena had described what a close was. So I tried to, again, get the definition of it so I can really explain what that was to anybody from America that does not know what a close is. But anytime I searched, I kept getting close contact. Like, for COVID. What is close contact? I'm like, that's not what I'm asking. Like a place where you live. So, I'm sorry. Can't really explain to you.
You know what? Pause.
Not even going to try.
Pause. Okay. So we looked it up, and we think close means some sort of alleyway.
But I don't even know if that's accurate because...
I don't know. But it's supposed to be close to the public. A gated area close to the public. That's what I could find.
But this definitely was it because he owned a boarding house, basically.
Okay.
Where people would come and stay at. So he lived there with his live-in girlfriend, who was a widow. She eventually just took his last name, even though they didn't actually get married.
Like Mary Piercy?
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much exactly like that. So her name was Margaret Laird, and then she later took Margaret Hare. So Burke and Hare met and became friends while working on the Union Canal as laborers. So that could have also been a reason for some of these people walking around at night with a blackened face, because they were laborers.
Well, I mean, if you're working in a factory at that time, I mean, when was like big? Well, that was probably mid 1800s, not early.
Yeah, because this is still early 1800s. This is like 1820 something, mid 1820s.
I mean, I'm not sure exactly when like the industrial age started, but I doubt there was like a ton of people working in factories at this point. Because I mean,
right,
when factories did become a big, widespread kind of thing, they were disgusting. You were working like 12, 14-hour shifts in horrific conditions.
Yeah.
So yeah, you were probably very dirty. So
yeah,
I mean, maybe.
So on November 29th, just like I said.
Oh, hey.
Important dates.
Happy anniversary.
1827. So, just a few years before I got married.
Of course.
One of the men in Hare's lodging house, who was referred to as Old Donald, he died of natural causes.
Okay.
And Hare's like, well, this is gonna make my boarding house look bad, So he's like, we gotta do something with this. So he still owed Hare £4 in rent. So I'm like, you're only paying £4? I don't know how much back rent he owed, but it totaled up to £4. Wow. So Hare was pissed about this. So he and Burke came up with the idea of selling his body to an anatomist for the money that he owed Hare at his death. So they took his body, which I think what actually happened. What actually happened, whoops, now I'm kicking my tripod, was that they literally took his body out of the casket, because I don't know if like family came and got his body and they had a funeral,
but I read even told family.
Well, I read that they like weighted down his coffin with tanner's bark and took his body. So like people would think that there's a body in there because it was heavier. I don't know. So already, again, we're off to a great start with these two. They were like, this bastard died. He still owes me money. Let's sell his body. So they took his body to the medical school.
That's really petty.
I know. Took his body to the medical school where Professor Robert Knox just happened to be at this point in time. Because I think they were looking for another. Because Robert Knox was a very famous anatomist. And people loved going to his lectures because he was like eccentric, I guess. And made the stuff fun. I don't know. But they were looking for another famous anatomist. And I can't remember any of the other ones' names. But Knox just happened to be there at that point in time. So he paid them £7 and 10 shillings for the body. So they split it and thought, wow, that was super easy. This is a decent amount of cash that we just made. That was real easy. Huh.
Let's keep doing this.
Huh. So early the next year, another one of the tenants, his name was Joseph, he got sick. And the duo was very eager for him to die. They're like, here's another one.
Here we go.
Here we go. But I think he just had a fever.
Yeah, but like people then like, oh, I got a paper cut, now I'm dead.
Well, I know, but it was nothing like tuberculosis or anything like that. It was literally he just had a fever.
Yeah.
It said one source said like he had a fever and was delirious, probably because it was a high fever and he was having fever dreams or something. I don't know.
Probably.
So they were so eager, in fact, that they just, you know what? They just went ahead and helped it along. They were like, you know what? He's almost out, so let's just make this a little quicker. So they gave him some whiskey, and Hare smothered him with a pillow while Burke sat on the man's chest. So
That's wow.
yeah, because they figured this would be the best way so that the body was still intact and good so that they could get top dollar for his body. They thought it through. They were like, okay, if we stab him, that's a mark on the body. We can't shoot him.
That's gonna
that's
gonna point fingers at
it's gonna raise some suspicions.
Yeah.
So they're like, how can we just, oh, I know, you lay on his chest. So that's already compromised. And then I'll just smother him.
First of all,
No marks.
oh, that makes my chest hurt.
Well, I know.
Oh.
Well, because if this grown-ass man is laying on your chest and somebody's smothering you, you're trying to get a breath, but basically all he's doing is flattening out your chest and your lungs so that you can't even get a breath even if you could.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yeah, so that's how they did it. And they did get top dollar because when they took him to Knox, they got 10 pounds for him,
Wow.
which would be close to 1,000 pounds in today's money.
Oh, damn.
Uh-huh. And at this point,
Still, though.
they were hooked. It was just too easy.
Mm-hmm.
There honestly isn't a clear timeline on the rest of the murders because they kind of give conflicting accounts because, spoiler alert, they get caught. There was, though, at least a total of 16 that were killed by them.
Mm-hmm.
But some think that could have been higher, obviously. So each one, what they would do, they would get them drunk so that they were easier to subdue. And then one would lay on their chest so that and then the other one smothered the person with either a pillow or even their bare hands.
Bare hands.
I don't know why I'm talking like this right now, but so yeah, so that's ultimately how they killed each of their victims.
Mm-hmm.
So people actually gave this way of killing a name. They called it Burking because of William Burke. I mean, they came up with so many better names for shit, and they call this Burking.
What about herring?
Because that just doesn't roll off the tongue as well.
I guess.
I don't know.
Well, when I hear burking, I think of barking, like rough. Like, I don't think that's
Bark.
That's
That's terrible.
oh. That's really funny. I'm sorry I laughed. That doesn't roll off the tongue as good as like the Resurrection Men and
No, I know.
the Bloody Code.
I know. They got anywhere between 8 and 10 pounds per body that they gave to Knox. So, I mean, they're making a decent amount of money for back in the 1800s, early 1800s at that. So, like I said, they both gave conflicting timelines as to who was killed when.
Yeah.
But I'll name some of the ones that we actually know the names of and an approximate-ish order that they were killed in. So the one that people think may have been either right after Joseph, because some speculate that maybe this woman was before Joseph, but a lot of people think that Joseph was definitely their first kill because of how he was sick and all of that, and then they just got into their groove, essentially. So this woman's name was Abigail Simpson. So Abigail Simpson was a salt seller. So she's just going around trying to sell salt. And they're like, how about we give you some alcohol? Does that sound great?
Okay.
Yeah. And so that's, again, got her drunk and smothered her. And they sold her. So a woman named Mary Patterson, who was possibly a local sex worker, that's some accounts say that, she was probably the next victim.
Yeah, she may have dabbled,
Yeah, so they're like, hey, we want to hire you. You want some alcohol? Because they're awful people.
Yeah.
So then there was an elderly woman. She was killed. And then possibly her grandson, who was still a child,
Oh, no.
was killed after her. Like, I don't know if she came there with her grandson.
Oh, no.
But there's also conflicting accounts whether
For
the
that.
grandson was killed or not.
Okay.
But the grandmother was a definite. She was definitely one of the victims. And honestly, with a lot of these people, their names just got lost with time, which is why I don't have a ton of names.
Yeah.
And they definitely didn't discriminate when it came to their victims. It could be there were men, there were women, they were old, they were young. I mean, they literally didn't care.
These were
Whoever they could lure with alcohol.
These were opportunistic killings.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because Hare had the boarding house,
Yeah.
So their wives, girlfriends, live-in girlfriends, whichever you want to call Helen and Margaret. They even helped lure some victims to the lodging house with a promise of alcohol so they could get them drunk and have the men kill them. So they weren't innocent in all of this. Not at all. Not even kind of.
Wow.
Yeah. So they were great.
All 4 of them were assholes.
Exactly.
Okay. Great.
So Professor Knox was the man that they sold to each time. And each time, he never questioned where they kept getting bodies.
Maybe he should have.
Yep. But he didn't. He was just
Okay.
like, another body to cut up. Here's some money.
God, you make him sound creepy, Paige.
What's funny is, one of his students thought that they recognized Mary Patterson, the possible sex worker.
Mm-hmm.
But he quickly dismissed that as being false. He was like, no, it's not. Just, don't talk about sex workers. No, you didn't go see her. So questions really got raised, though, when more of his students recognized another one of the bodies that they brought in. And he was one of the last few because, I mean, there were just quite a bit in between Mary Patterson and then this young man. So
It's appalling that they weren't like, so it's these 2 guys that are always bringing in dead people.
Uh-huh.
And they got some weird marks on their chests. Oh, God.
Yeah.
Fucking people, man.
Yeah. So, questions really got raised when more of his students recognized another one of the bodies that they brought in, because this happened to be the body of 18-year-old James Wilson, who everyone knew around town as Daft Jamie. Which I'm like, no, that poor kid. Because he was mentally disabled and he had a deformed foot that caused him to have a limp.
Oh, no.
Poor little Daft Jamie.
Daft Jamie?
I know. And I guess he, was kind of a beggar. He just kind of, I don't know if he just lived on the streets, because he did have a mom and a sister at least, because I'll talk about them later.
Uh-huh.
But I don't know. He begged on the street and everybody called him. But, he was very well known around Edinburgh as Daft Jamie because everybody saw him. Everybody passed him. So, and again, he had a deformed foot, which caused him to have a limp. So, again.
So even
very
more
well-
noticeable.
Mhm. So, they bring in this body of this young man who has this deformed foot. Everybody was like, I think this is that Jamie kid that,
Yeah.
walks around, and the Knox was like, psh, no way. It's not. No, it's not. They wouldn't do. No. So he cut off his head and cut off his limp foot so as nobody could, recognize the body.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So Knox is, not a great guy.
Look, after how many bodies, I've already considered him not a great guy for being all like, this is totally fine. Here's your money. Just keep them coming, honey. No.
Well, yeah, because after they brought in old Donald, the very first guy that they sold,
Yeah.
that owed him back rent, There was a couple different sources that said that one of the assistants or something was basically like, hey, thanks, come again if you have any more bodies. Basically like that. And that's when they were like,
It planted a seed.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
No.
Thanks, come again. So the final victim was a middle-aged woman named Margaret, I think, Docherty? It's Docherty.
Docherty.
I think it's Docherty.
Sorry, Scotland.
So they killed her on Halloween of 1828. So their spree was like 11 months total. So she was lured in with the normal promise of lodging and alcohol and killed just like the rest. What?
So they brought to this fucking bastard almost 20 bodies in less than a year.
11 months, yes.
And we're never questioned about it. That's too many. What? Oh
11 months.
I was expecting like several years.
Oh, no. This was 11 months.
Oh, why didn't he question that? He's just like, this is fine.
Well, because they were low on bodies. Come on.
Oh my god.
And they needed to study. You don't understand.
I'm so done.
Okay, so anyway, she was lured in, again, Halloween 1828. I keep saying 1900. Okay. She was lured in with a normal promise of lodging and alcohol and killed just like the rest. So in the meantime, another couple, Anne and James Gray, they were staying at the lodging house as well. They happened across Margaret's body in one of the rooms, and then they went to the police. Because, like, I guess Burke and Hare were, like, telling them, oh, no, you can't go in here. You just go ahead and go into that room and, like, eat. You can't come into this room. And Anne was like, my stockings are in that bedroom, so can I please go get my stockings? They're like, oh, no, you don't need those right now. Just shoo. And she was like, well, fuck you. When they left for something, she went in the room and they saw the bed, Margaret's body. So they went to the police. But not before Helen, who is Burke's mistress for all accounts, Helen was like, oh, you know what? I'll give you 10 pounds a week and we'll just forget this ever happened. How's that sound? Does that sound great? 10 pounds a week. Come on, that's like a lot. They're like, no, fuck you. We're out. Now, I don't know how long Helen was planning on giving them 10 pounds a week. And they didn't stick around to see how long because they were like, no, there's a dead body here. We're going to the police. So, Burke and Wind... I mean, let me tell you what this sentence says, actually. Burke and Hare got wind of it, is what I was trying to say.
Gotcha. Burke and Wind sounds like another form of shoe. Like, these are my Birkenstocks, and these are my Birken Winds.
That's a great name, actually.
So Birkenstocks.
They got wind of it, obviously, because Helen's probably like, hey, BTW, we need to leave. So they hurried up and sold the body, and then the police came a-knocking.
Of course. Let's sell the body first. Let's take care of that.
Let's hurry up and get this done.
Right.
So nobody could get their story straight between the four of them,
not.
Obviously. They all gave conflicting stories as to when Margaret left, as they were saying, and how she left and why she left. So it gave police enough probable cause to bring Burke and Helen in first, and then Hare and Margaret, the girlfriend of Hare, not the Margaret that died. Yes. Then they brought Hare and Margaret in. And if you can believe it, Burke and Hare immediately turned on each other.
Go fucking figure.
Yep. So the investigation quickly led them to Knox, and Margaret, the victim, Margaret, her body was identified. A friend of Mary Patterson identified some of her clothing that they found at the lodging house. Actually, this was the friend that was at the lodging house with Mary.
Okay.
but she ended up leaving early for some reason, and then they ended up killing just Mary because they were planning on killing both of them.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Well, I bet she was like, thank God I got out.
No kidding. So, even though they had those two things, it's not really super hard evidence.
No.
They only technically have one body, and it wasn't even in their possession, you know? And I mean, they don't have any, it's not like they have fingerprint evidence or, you know, anything like that at this point in time. So, they decided to make a deal with Hare. It's kind of one of those things, you make a deal with the lesser evil, kind of.
Yeah.
But they didn't know.
It's one of those deal with the devils.
They didn't know which one was the lesser evil. I mean, they both are. So it's like, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, kind of. So they offered him immunity.
That's too much.
If he would turn King's evidence and provide full details of Doherty's murder and any others they may have committed. And he just sang like a fucking canary.
Well, if they're giving him immunity. No.
Yeah, they did.
Even Carla Homolka did prison time when they made a deal with her. You don't.
Immunity.
Oh my God. I'm getting so stressed out.
Immunity.
No.
Yep.
That should have never happened in a million years.
Also, did you love how it's turning King's evidence instead of turning state's evidence?
Yes.
Can I just say that I love that?
Another song on our album.
Turning King's evidence.
Turning King's evidence.
I love it.
That sounds way fucking better.
So much better.
So much
Everything is better in Scotland.
All their names are so cool.
I love you. They're going to be like, you're never allowed here.
They're going to be like, this is too much for us. It's not us, it's you.
We're going to get a restraining order against you.
Just this country, Scotland, takes out an OP on the two of us. Could you imagine?
Oh my. So anyway, immunity. So also since he couldn't testify against his quote unquote wife, Margaret, she was also let off. Yep. So since Hare fully confessed, they decided they had enough to try Burke and his mistress for the murders of Mary Patterson, James Wilson, and Margaret Doherty. Mm-hmm. So those were the three they decided to actually try them on because students actually recognized Mary Patterson, plus there was the clothing evidence. Students recognized James Wilson, who was Daft Jamie, and then, of course, the last victim, Margaret Doherty. Mm-hmm. They didn't charge Knox with anything because he technically wasn't involved with the actual murder part. So one of the investigators, which this is amazing, one of the investigators said of Knox that he was, quote, deficient in principle and heart, but didn't actually break any laws. So I'm like, deficient in principle and heart? That is phenomenal.
Another song
that
in
is,
our album.
That is so poetic.
It really is.
And so true because...
Very true. Well, because obviously he knew... He
knew something shady was
going on, but he just was like, you know what? I'm getting what I want, so this is what all that matters.
He literally decapitated a corpse so nobody could
wouldn't
recognize
be identified.
him.
Yeah.
So yes, he knew what the fuck was going on.
Oh, yeah.
So even though he wasn't ever charged, he was professionally ruined after this and got out. So, I mean, there's that.
Good.
But yeah, he was completely ruined. He was kicked out of any...
Good.
I don't want to say society or like clubs. It wasn't a club. It was like a surgeon's or a doctor's, whatever. He was kicked out of all that, kicked out of that medical place that he was...
Could no longer, quote unquote, practice as an anatomist.
Right.
That sort of thing.
So,
well, good, again.
He was shunned.
Good.
So, yes.
Fucking
good on them for
bastard.
That.
Yeah.
So, the trial started on Christmas Eve of 1928. So, just like, it just baffles me how quickly these murder trials started way back when.
And ended.
Because
and how quickly people were executed as well.
I know, because, I mean, there's currently murder shit here that it's 2 years on and we still don't have a trial yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There will be eventually, but it's 2 years on.
there's been a global pandemic in the midst of some of these murders here.
Yeah.
So that probably contributed to that.
But still, even before that, murder trials typically take at least a year to get started. So just a little over a month and a half after the last victim was found, the trial started on Christmas Eve of 1928, and there was a huge turnout to watch because at this point in time, the news had spread. It was almost like they had phones to text each other because it's amazing how quickly the news spread back then.
Yeah.
So the trial actually ran all the way, because it started in the Christmas Eve morning.
Yeah.
It ran all the way through the night and into the next morning. It didn't stop. They didn't even stop for dinner, like the LAPD needed to do.
Well, Paige, when you're on an excursion looking for dead bodies in the desert, you gotta stop for lunch. Come on.
And dinner and a snack.
And you gotta take a nap in the car.
No, but in Scotland, they're badass motherfuckers.
They're like, we're fucking stopping.
We are seeing this through to the end.
We're staying here until we are too delirious.
Nobody's leaving until we get a conviction.
Wow.
And a conviction they got.
Oh.
So
I would hope so.
Yes. So the next morning, I think like around 10 o'clock is when they handed it over to the jury for them to deliberate.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, they couldn't prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Helen was involved in the murders. So she was acquitted. She was let off.
Damn it.
But Burke was found guilty of all three and sentenced to death.
Okay.
Because of course he was.
Yeah.
The Lord Justice clerk, David Boyle, again.
I literally thought you were getting ready to say David Bowie.
The Lord Justice clerk, David Bowie.
Did you see my face kind of go like...
David Boyle.
Okay.
But again, the Lord Justice clerk. I love it. You guys' names are so much better.
I love this. I mean, not this case, but you understand what I'm saying,
yes.
though.
So he was the one who looked over the trial. So basically the judge here.
The Lord Justice.
The Lord Justice clerk.
Instead of like, oh, the Honorable Judge Blair.
Boyle. Nope.
David Bowie. Judge David Bowie.
So he was the one that looked over the trial, and he was the one that gave the sentence. And this man was amazing.
I love a sassy judge.
Oh, he says, quote, "Your body should be publicly dissected and anatomized. And I trust that if it is ever customary to preserve skeletons, yours will be preserved in order that posterity may keep in remembrance your atrocious crimes." Ooh. Mic fucking drop.
Okay, Mr. Justice David Bowie. That's amazing.
Amazing.
That's great.
Amazing.
That's so good.
So he's like, in some poetic justice here, we're all going to watch your body be dissected.
That's awesome.
And if we can ever figure out how to preserve a skeleton, you're going to be put on display.
That's truly a tit for tat.
Seriously.
Really.
So, outstanding. So he was hanged in front of a crowd of 25,000 people.
Holy shit.
Yeah. There were people charging like up to 10 shillings for like their house or lodging place to watch from windows. People were making money off of this.
Wow.
Like, if any buildings around, if you owned it, you were charging people 10 shillings, up to 10 shillings to watch.
Other places have done that too, like with other executions and just crimes in general.
Yeah. So he was hanged on January 28th, so close to my birthday, January 28th, 1829. So they didn't waste a whole lot of time to hang him either, because that was a month later. There was no appeals for that, so.
Well, I mean, the same way with Mary Piercy. 2 months, and they hung her.
Yep.
After they convicted her.
His body was put on public display afterwards for a little while, and then donated to science to be publicly dissected. His skeleton was, as directed, put on display at Surgeons' Hall in Edinburgh along with his death mask, where it remains to this day.
Oh my God.
Now you know.
Now I understand
why I want to go.
Why we have to go to Scotland.
One of the many reasons we have to go to Scotland. Yep. I know. It's amazing.
That's amazing.
Yep, I got pictures.
I don't know what that sound was, but
I don't either.
Excited.
I'll post them. So,
Absolutely.
both women were thought to have gone back to Ireland because they were publicly shamed for taking part in the murders.
Oh, no shit.
One of them, I don't remember which one, but was always met with angry mobs of people.
Good.
I know. And back then, I mean, angry mobs are no good now, but even back then.
Ooh.
Yep. And they, tuck-tailed and ran back to Ireland.
Good.
So after that, no one knows their movements once they left Edinburgh. So,
yeah.
as far as Hare goes, the family of poor daft Jamie, it was his mom and his sister, I read, they filed a petition protesting against releasing Hare because they were going with their agreement. They gave him immunity.
Which is so bad.
Even though he admitted to taking part in every single murder.
Yeah.
It was considered and denied.
Why?
Yep. They kept their word because Hare was released on February 5th of 1829 and was assisted in leaving Edinburgh because, basically, by police escort to wherever. And then they were like, okay, off you go. Because he was offered immunity, so they just let him go.
And the police offered him assistance to leave the country.
Yep.
Oh.
I know, but at that point, it's like you can't, as police, can't condone another murder, which is what the people of Edinburgh would have done, So, he too disappeared, and nobody knows the end of his story either.
Yeah, he probably changed his name and...
Well, and I did see in another source, again, this was only one source, but I thought I'd mention it, that he was recognized wherever he went, and people beat the shit out of him, and then he ended his life. Not suicided, but his life ended as a beggar on the street.
Good.
So, yeah. Not what he deserved.
No.
Because he deserved worse.
He definitely did, but I mean, I'm not mad about that.
Right.
That people beat the shit out of him.
But again, that's only one source that I read. I think that was just speculation.
That's probably more of just a theory,
Yeah. So there was a rhyme that circulated during the investigation and the trial that I have to share before I give the last bit, because there's a little bit more history that I want to go into after this.
Okay.
After, due to some of this.
Yeah.
But I have to tell you because it's amazing.
You have to.
Now, I cannot do a Scottish accent, nor I'm not going to try to, but I'm going to sound very American while saying this. And I'm sorry, because I wish I didn't, but...
Well, we can't help that we're Americans.
I can't help it. So, it says, up close and doon the stair, but and ben wi' Burke and Hare. Burke's the butcher, Hare's then thief, knocks the boy that buys the beef.
Oh, shit.
I mean.
Wow. That's gonna be in one of our songs, is all I have to say.
Seriously.
Wow,
Again, people of Scotland, come on. You guys are amazing.
Boy that buys the
knocks
beef.
the boy that buys the beef. Yep.
Wow.
But up the close, because the close, that's what they're talking about, the place where they lived, up the close and doon the stair. I can just imagine a Scottish person saying this, and that's amazing. Amazing.
If you're from Scotland, if you want to just send us a recording of you saying that, that'd be great.
Oh, we would love that. Please. So, yeah.
Whispering, please.
This is why they're going to get a restraining order against us.
Yeah.
So, I could not share that.
That's
so.
Wow.
To finish up give you a little closure here. Burke and Hare were not the only people who took advantage of anatomy killing. Is basically essentially what they ended up being called. They were the anatomy killers, but they weren't the only ones. But they were the only ones who got this much attention for it, and they were the ones I think that had killed the most people. So because of this, the Anatomy Act of 1832, which again with the names, this is amazing. This was put into play. So this act changed it to where anatomists had access to corpses that were unclaimed after death, like people in hospitals, prisons, or workhouses.
Okay.
So because even though somebody was executed, they still had family that would try to claim them.
Yeah.
But before this act was put into play, the anatomist had the right to take that body from the family, essentially.
Yeah, that's no bueno.
Right. So, especially if it was somebody who cut down a tree and was killed. So, then once the Anatomy Act was put into play, they could only take unclaimed bodies. So,
okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's what happened. So, people also now could donate their loved ones to them. And what would happen with that is then the school or hospital or whatever it was that they donated them to, they would cover the cost of burial once basically they were finished with what they needed the body for.
That's really cool.
So, yep. So that was the Anatomy Act of 1832.
You know, actually, I work at a funeral home, and we actually do have forms where if you want to donate your loved one to science, we have a form that we fill out and everything. I haven't gotten to fill one out yet, but maybe in the future.
I think that's a really cool thing to do. Honestly, I've even considered it myself.
Well, it is really cool because when you die, there's a lot of options that you can do.
Well, especially
honestly.
now.
Yeah, and think of all the many discoveries that, scientists have made because of things like this.
Yeah. Yeah. But I thought that was a cool little tidbit to end this on.
Pretty cool.
So I gave you a little history, and I gave you a little Burke and Hare.
And a little bit more history.
Then a little more history.
Wow.
Isn't that fascinating?
That is fascinating. And yeah, these are definitely not the first. I didn't know they had a name, the anatomy killers. I didn't know that was a term. But yeah,
anatomy killings.
People have done this for a very long time.
But the thing that actually kind of makes me angry, there's a lot that makes me angry about this. Yeah. But one of the things that makes me angry about people thinking about Burke and Hare, they thought of them as grave robbers, but they weren't. They literally robbed no graves.
Why were they thought of?
I don't know. That's the thing. I don't know. There's a lot of the sources that I read said something about how people considered them grave robbers, but they weren't. They didn't rob any graves at all. Other than maybe that Joseph dude, because I saw in the sources that they weighted down his coffin to make it feel like there's a body in there, but even then, they didn't rob his grave.
That's strange.
They were not part of the resurrection men. They were just anatomy killers. Yeah. So they were not grave robbers.
Yeah, that is strange. I wonder why.
Don't know.
I would say they didn't really they didn't need to rob any graves.
They
were making
They were creating their own thing for money.
Yeah.
They figured out a way to do it, and they stuck with it.
Wow.
So, yep. So we need to take a trip to Scotland.
Absolutely.
Go to Edinburgh.
And you're going to show me those pictures after we're done recording, right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
And I will post them.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Absolutely.
But, yeah, so that's the story of Burke and Hare.
Well, I'm glad that justice was served for at least him. Maybe it's asking too much that both of the people involved get sentenced, but who am I? I'm just a guy.
In love with a girl.
Yeah.
I know.
But it's still, wow. I cannot believe they gave him immunity.
Full immunity.
Wow.
To turn King's evidence. I love it so much.
Oh, I love it so much. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us this week for Burke and Hare. Is that what we're going to call this episode? Shut up.
He agrees. Yeah, I think we'll say Burke.
Okay.
Burke and Hare, the anatomy killers.
Okay.
I like that.
It's pretty good. It's not good. Don't. So thank you everyone for joining us this week again. If you would like to keep in contact with us, you can follow us on Facebook at
2K Away.
And you can follow us on Instagram at
2K Away Podcast.
And we do have a Gmail as well if you'd like to contact us, or if you want to suggest something, we have a Gmail.
Or if you want to send it, if you're from Scotland and you want to send us a recording of you saying the rhyme, we would love to hear that. 2K Away Podcast at gmail.com.
Yes. And if you want, we can play it.
Oh, yes.
This is why Scotland is going to have a restraining order against us.
Yes.
It's fine.
Just know we love you.
We understand as well.
Also, yes.
We do have a YouTube channel. If you want to see our, as I always say, our pretty pig faces.
2K Away Podcast.
Yes. And another thing that you can help us, because we will be launching the Patreon soon, so definitely keep a lookout for that.
I know we've been saying soon for like 5 months, but
that's none of your business over there. I'm pointing at Paige. But before we launch the Patreon, another great way that you can support us is Apple Podcasts. I'm not sure if any of the other podcast apps can rate, but if you want to rate and review us on the Apple Podcast app, we would really greatly appreciate it, because we're still, even though we've entered into a lot of different countries, we're still actually really small. Mm-hmm. So,
and we now have shirts available. We've got shirts, we've got stickers, and some notepads. Yes. So if you want some of those, get into contact with us, send us an email or a private message on Facebook, Instagram, whatever.
Whatever you want.
We'll
mail it to you.
Love to send it to you.
We would love
to send it to you.
We would love to send it to you, right? But yes, we're still really small, and that helps us get noticed a little bit more. That brings us up in the charts a little bit, and it helps us get a bigger audience, basically. So rate and review us. And if you have nothing nice to say, please
don't say anything at all.
Please don't. So thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll see you all next Tuesday, the best day of the week.
Bye.
Bye.